audiobooks is not having to necessarily seek out a translation, because you can often find an English version of the book that you're reading in Spanish. So that takes care of the need to find an English translation for other content that you may be looking for on your own. And you'll easily be able to reference the English version if you need to really kind of figure out what's going on, right? If it's a fiction book, you'll want to keep track of the story. So you don't want to be completely lost and having to stop every 2 seconds to look up new words. So sometimes it's helpful just to have the English version close by as a companion. And something else that you can do is actually read the English version first, because then you'll know what the story is about. That's why I often recommend, if you have a favorite book in English that you've read maybe more than once, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I tend to like nonfiction, but that's why I suggest you read what you're interested in. But if it's a book you've already read in English, so you know the story pretty well, that's a perfect candidate for a book to get in Spanish, because you don't have to struggle with trying to figure out what's going on, and you can focus solely on building your vocabulary, and as a side benefit, your listening comprehension as well. The other great thing about books is that books generally tell stories. So even if it's a nonfiction book, there's usually, if it's a good book, you'll notice that you'll usually find these same elements of stories, and these types of narratives really help keep us interested, engaged, motivated to learn more. And oh, by the way, they also help our memory, which is perfect when you're trying to learn vocabulary. How many times have you learned a word or a phrase and then you heard it again and you were like, oh my gosh, I should know this. I know I've heard this before. I should know what this word means. Why can't I remember? So anytime you can have some type of hack that can help you tap into your brain's natural ability to remember things and be able to recall them, that is a real benefit when you're learning vocabulary. And this is something that is a benefit to using a narrative or a story versus just, picking a word list and learning through flashcards, or just saying, I just want to learn, 20 words today, and you pick 20 random words because someone said they're frequently used, but that's great, but you don't have any context. So having the story also provides a context, which helps us remember new vocabulary a lot better. So all of these are pluses for language learning, which is why I think audiobooks are a unique tool that you can use to really help you build your vocabulary and not create pronunciation errors. So how do you find audiobooks? Now, audiobooks, again, are just the narrated version of a written work, and they really have increased in popularity and availability over the last few years. So there are so many titles that you can find in Spanish. Even if you go to the local library, they might even have a section of books on CD. How ancient is that? But they still do exist in some libraries. A lot of libraries also have an online version of their catalog, at least the public libraries here in the US, where you can actually rent or borrow, I guess that's the better word. You're not renting videos from Blockbuster, another dated reference, but you can borrow books digitally. And you can borrow ebooks that way, and some of them also have audiobooks. So I recommend the first place you go is your local library. That's probably going to be the cheapest way to do this because it's free. And see what digital resources are available on your library's website, and if you can borrow audiobooks from there. Now, if you can't find a great selection at your local public library, there are services like audible.com and audiobooks.com, where you have access to a catalog of over 4,000 audiobooks in Spanish, covering a variety of genres and topics. So any book that's on the New York Times bestseller list, most likely you will see a Spanish version of that. And for many of them, you can find the audiobook as well. Now, many of these services are monthly subscription services. They don't usually allow you just to buy one book at a time. But if you want to check out Audible in particular, go to our show notes page at learnspanishconsalsa.com/128, and you'll be able to get a link. If you click on the link on the show notes page, that will give you access to a free audiobook. So you have 30 days to explore it absolutely free. So if you're not already a member of Audible, go to learnspanishconsalsa.com/128 and download your free audiobook with our special link. Now, how do you pick an audiobook to start with? So some people might find the idea of reading and even listening to books not super exciting, but I assure you there is something for everyone. And if you listen to a podcast like this one or other podcasts, then audio content is perfect for you. So you're already used to consuming content this way, so audiobooks are not much different. In fact, many of the audiobook apps now also have podcasts. So they really go hand in hand. So if you like podcasts, you'll probably also enjoy the experience of listening to an audiobook. Like I suggested, pick something that's interesting to you, whether it's mysteries, self-development books, personal finances. If you're an entrepreneur, you can listen to books about building business. There's so much available. Whatever you're into, I know you can find a book that meets your needs. Now, if you're a beginner, and I know I mentioned at the beginning, this technique works a lot better at the intermediate level, but if you're more at the advanced beginner level and you still want to test this out, I would try looking for shorter books, or even children's books can be good sometimes if you're at the beginner level. And especially if you're also learning Spanish with your children and exposing them to the language, finding an audiobook story that you can listen to together as a family is also a great way to increase exposure to Spanish for other members of your household. But just try a book that's a lot shorter, that has vocabulary that's a bit simpler, and again, something that you're probably already familiar with in English, and you can even give this a try at the advanced beginner level. Now, the good thing about a service like Audible, let's say you pick a book and you don't like it. If you're listening to a book and you don't like it for some reason, you're like, I just don't understand this narrator, I don't like the way they're talking, it's not making sense to me. Many services, especially I know Audible, allows you to exchange the book at a later time. So if you start listening to it and it's not like your favorite thing, you can always try something else. I suggest that you also just pick one book at a time to start with, because you're going to be doing a lot of repetition for this, and it might take you a while to get through it depending on how long the book is. So you need to make sure you pick a book that you really like so you can give it your full attention. So you can potentially get weeks and weeks, if not months, of listening practice and vocabulary building out of just one book. You could easily learn hundreds of words from one book. So it's a great way to build your vocabulary in context. So let's talk about how you use audiobooks to actually build your vocabulary. The first thing you need to do, which is an obvious step, is download the audiobook. And this is important to make sure it's on your device so that you don't have to worry about having a Wi-Fi connection when it comes time for you to study. You can just have the MP3 file downloaded so that you're ready to get started. The second thing is you want to also get the text. Now, as I mentioned,